about what truly happened from his ongoing health struggles to his battle with alcohol.
I looked down, and there was a bottle of Hennessy right by his leg.
This shocking evidence is flipping the entire story we thought we knew. So let's get into it. The tragic final chapter of Nathaniel Dwayne Hale's life reads like a real-life street tragedy mixed with a medical disaster packed with family tension, legal drama, and courtroom battles still dragging on more than a decade after he passed. What truly happened to Nate Dogg wasn't just about the strokes that claimed his life at only 41. It was about watching everything he built from scratch fall apart piece by piece, surrounded by accusations, lawsuits, and family warfare that made regular neighborhood beef look like child's play. The first major warning sign came on what seemed like a regular day in December 2007, when the man whose voice blessed countless hip-hop classics was suddenly hit with what doctors described as a severe and massive stroke, one that changed his entire world. On December 19, 2007, at just 38 years old, Nate Dogg was rushed to Pomona Valley Hospital Medical Center in Pomona, California. At first, doctors thought he had suffered a heart attack, but the reality was far worse. The stroke left him completely paralyzed on his left side, battling neuromuscular issues, loss of feeling, and the inability to walk. In a cruel twist, the one thing that didn't seem damaged was his mind or his voice, the very things that made him legendary. Doctors were hopeful, though, pointing to his age and overall health as signs he could recover. He stayed in the hospital through Christmas, finally getting released on December 26 to begin what would become a long and painful recovery journey. But the nightmare was just beginning. While Nate Dogg was pushing through physical therapy stuck in a wheelchair, trying to regain movement, the legal drama started piling up. In June 2008, only months into recovery, he was arrested and charged with felony criminal threats and stalking after allegedly threatening his estranged wife through emails and chasing her on Interstate 405. The stress from these legal issues, combined with what family later described as poor eating habits and an unhealthy lifestyle, created the perfect storm. Warren G., his day one homie and longtime collaborator, would later reveal just how heartbreaking and chaotic this period really was.
It was a surprise because he had so much progress. He had progressed a lot. I was like, like soon as I get home off the road, I'm going to go.
The harsh truth was that Nate Dogg's condition was far more fragile than anyone understood. On September 12, 2008, less than a year after the first stroke disaster struck again. This second stroke was brutally severe, leaving him with almost no movement below the neck and dependent on a feeding tube. Some reports even claimed he lost the ability to speak entirely, stripping away the very gift that made him a legend in hip-hop. Warren G.'s emotional account of visiting Nate during this time paints the full picture of just how tragic his situation had become.
Starting to be able to tell you, like, yes and no, I used to talk to him.
But perhaps most poignantly, Warren described how Nate would react to his old music.
I played Ain't No Fun, and he cracked up so hard. I played Regulated, he cracked up.
But maybe the most emotional part of it all was how Warren described Nate's reaction to hearing his own music again.
And I would say little jokes and stuff, and he'd just laugh. And then I would call people on the phone and put it on speaker, and I'd tell them to say what's up to him, like, say hi to Nate, y'all.
Even though he was paralyzed from the neck down, Nate could still light up at the sound of the music that defined his life. Warren G. remembered moments when
I looked down, and there was a bottle of Hennessy right by his leg.
The criminal charges against Nate were officially dropped in April 2009 as his health continued to spiral, with prosecutors agreeing to dismiss the case partly because of his severe medical condition. On March 15, 2011, Nathaniel Dwayne Hale passed away in Long Beach, California, at just 41 years old, after suffering complications from multiple strokes. Congestive heart failure triggered by the damage those strokes caused was listed as a contributing factor. His attorney, Mark Geragos, confirmed the cause of death, closing what Warren G. described as a nearly 4-year fight for his life. But in a dark twist, Nate's death wasn't the end of the chase, it was the opening chapter of the legal storm that would consume his legacy. Despite earning millions throughout his career, Nate Dogg died intestate without a will, setting the stage for a legal nightmare that still hasn't fully died down. His estate, originally valued at just $200,000 after debts, has since climbed to an estimated $4 million thanks to ongoing royalties from his music catalog. The main battleground became a heated war between his widow, LaToya Calvin, and his children, especially his oldest son, Nigel D. Hale. The fighting began almost immediately, with family members accusing LaToya of causing a car accident during Nate's recovery and failing to support him. The most explosive accusation of all was that she didn't even attend his funeral, an allegation that poisoned family relationships for years. But to understand the full weight of Nate Dogg's downfall, you have to rewind to the streets and courtrooms that shaped his reputation long before the music industry crowned him a legend. Nate's street credibility didn't come from lyrics, it came from a past filled with real criminal charges, close calls, and the constant threat of prison. The man born Nathaniel Dwayne Hale wasn't performing a persona. He lived that life, survived it, and carried those scars throughout his entire career. His legal troubles started long before most people ever heard his voice. In 1991, while forming the group 213 with his cousin Snoop Dogg and close friend Warren G., Nate Dogg was arrested and charged with armed robbery tied to a holdup at a check-cashing business in Long Beach. Authorities claimed he took part in the robbery, but Nate insisted he was innocent and that the arrest was a case of mistaken identity. The case dragged on for 5 long years in which his career was exploding, including his legendary debut on Dr. Dre's The Chronic in 1992, yet the threat of a lengthy prison sentence was always looming over him. The trial finally began in 1996 in Long Beach Superior Court. It lasted 3 weeks and centered on 2 counts of armed robbery. Nate took the stand himself, repeating that he had nothing to do with the crime. His legal team, including attorneys David Chesnoff and Marsha Morrissey, argued that police had withheld crucial evidence that could have proven his innocence. The prosecution relied heavily on witness IDs and circumstantial claims, while the defense attacked the reliability of those identifications and the investigative errors behind the case. On July 19, 1996, the jury reached a split decision that showed just how unclear the case had been. Nate Dogg was acquitted on 1 robbery count, but on the second, the jury deadlocked 9-3 in favor of acquittal. The judge declared a mistrial. Rather than retrying the case, the district attorney's office decided to drop it, clearing Nate and allowing his career to continue unhindered. But just as one chapter closed, another opened. On October 26, 1994, before the first case even went to trial, Nate Dogg found himself facing a different set of armed robbery charges, this time tied to a holdup at a Taco Bell in San Pedro, California. The accusation rested mainly on a cashier's description of the robber, which supposedly matched Nate Dogg. Once again, he insisted it was a case of mistaken identity and that he had nothing to do with the crime. The absurdity of the charge becomes clear when you look at the circumstances. Singer Michelle later revealed that Nate had a $15,000 royalty check in his pocket around that time, raising the obvious question: why would a man with that kind of money rob a Taco Bell for pocket change? People in San Pedro echoed the same doubts, noting that Nate was already gaining fame and earning real money from music. In the end, he was acquitted of all charges in that case. Still, the pattern was hard to ignore. Nate Dogg was walking a dangerous line, rising musically, yet constantly pulled back by the shadows of his past. Along with the 1991 charges, he had faced nearly 11 years in prison, but beat both cases. Unfortunately, his good fortune in the courtroom wouldn't last. In 1996, the same year he was cleared of the robbery charges, Nate Dogg was convicted of a drug-related offense in Los Angeles County. It was his first official criminal conviction and the moment he legally became a felon. That label followed him for life, barring him from owning firearms under federal and state law and setting the stage for future legal troubles. The new millennium didn't bring relief. On June 17, 2000, shortly after performing in Anaheim, Nate Dogg was thrust into what would become one of hip-hop's most dramatic arrest stories. The allegations read like a movie script: kidnapping his former girlfriend and holding her against her will, assaulting her, making violent threats including threatening to burn down her mother's house and even setting her mother's car on fire. A SWAT team stormed his Pomona home to arrest him, creating a scene straight out of a police drama. During the arrest, authorities also found a firearm unregistered and illegal for him to possess due to his felony status. The list of charges was staggering: kidnapping, domestic violence, terrorist threats, arson, battery, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. His bail was set at a massive $1 million, which Dr. Dre posted, allowing Nate to continue on the Up in Smoke tour. But the legal process continued relentlessly. By March 2001, the most serious felony charges were dismissed due to lack of evidence, mainly because his ex-girlfriend refused to cooperate with prosecutors. She avoided subpoenas and declined to testify. Ultimately, Nate Dogg pleaded no contest to a single misdemeanor possessing an unmarked firearm as a felon and received 3 years probation and a $1,000 fine. The cycle of arrests didn't stop. In April 2002, police pulled over a tour bus carrying Nate Dogg for speeding near Kingman, Arizona. When officers smelled marijuana, a search uncovered 2 pistols including a loaded .38 caliber revolver reported stolen out of San Bernardino along with roughly 4 ounces of cannabis. Nate was booked into Mojave County Jail and released on a $3,500 bond. By May 2002, the weapons charges were dropped under a plea deal that had him admit to a misdemeanor cannabis possession charge. His sentence included a year of probation, community service, and mandatory drug counseling, a pattern that was becoming all too familiar. The domestic violence issues that haunted his later years escalated again in July 2006, when Nate Dogg allegedly broke into the Huntington Beach home where his ex-girlfriend, her new boyfriend, and her mother were living.
How me and Nate is, you know what I mean? So anything I would bring up, it don't matter what it was. I could put on some like a jazz tune that's like off balance and just crazy. He'd come up with some to that.
Warren's reflection on Nate's talent revealed an artist who blended raw musical genius with true street authenticity.
Anything that you could put in his face, he would turn that in.
This blend of musical versatility and real street credibility made him indispensable to Death Row Records during its golden era. Yet behind the smooth vocals and melodic hooks was a man whose authenticity came from lived experience, not a crafted persona. Tamila Jones, who briefly dated Nate Dogg, offered rare insight into the person behind the public image.
I met a different Nate Dogg than the one that everyone else got to see. I actually met Nathaniel Hale. I didn't meet Nate Dogg.
She shed light on the deep impact his religious upbringing had on him.
I'm going to totally destroy his image, but this is a man that grew up in a church, whose mother was the choir leader in the church.
Oh, that's where the scene came from.
And his father was the minister. That's who I...
This duality, the church-raised choir boy turned gangster rapper, shaped much of Nate Dogg's music and personal struggles. The feuds that punctuated his career weren't mere publicity stunts. They were rooted in real tensions, authentic rivalries, and the dangerous intersection of street politics and the music industry. One of the most notorious conflicts involved his battles with BG Knockout and Dresta, 2 Compton rappers affiliated with Eazy-E's Ruthless Records, who were caught in the larger Death Row vs. Ruthless feud. The tension came to a head during the filming of Warren G.'s Regulate music video in 1995 at a Los Angeles golf course. BG Knockout later described how Nate Dogg, riding in a golf cart with Coolio, accidentally ran over his foot, ruining new shoes and injuring his toe. When BG confronted him, the situation quickly escalated into violence. Dresta's account of being struck with a golf club highlights just how fast a simple confrontation could spiral into something